Hamas taking Israel by complete surprise in what's being called an intelligence failure for the ages.
Squads of masked men in black, armed with assault rifles, inside of Israeli towns and cities.
The Gaza-Israel conflict. Hey everyone, welcome to our channel. In today's video, we are going to talk about the Gaza-Israel conflict. So if you want to know all about it, then keep watching this video till the end. Israel-Hamas war. War between Israel and Palestinian militants, especially Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PIJ, that began on October 7, 2023, when Hamas launched a land, sea, and air assault on Israel from the Gaza Strip. The October 7 attack resulted in more than 1,200 deaths, primarily Israeli citizens, making it the deadliest day for Israel since its independence. More than 240 people were taken hostage during the attack. The next day, Israel declared itself in a state of war for the first time since the Yom Kippur War in 1973. The war began with the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, conducting airstrikes on the Gaza Strip, followed weeks later by the incursion of ground troops and armored vehicles. On October 7, 2023, Hamas led a stunning coordinated attack, which took place on Shemini Atzeret, a Jewish holiday that closes the autumn Thanksgiving festival of Sukkah. Many IDF soldiers were on leave, and the IDF's attention had been focused on Israel's northern border rather than on the Gaza Strip in the south. The assault began about with a barrage of at least 2,200 rockets launched into Israel in just 20 minutes. During that opening salvo, Hamas used more than half the total number of rockets launched from Gaza during all of 2021's 11-day conflict. The barrage reportedly overwhelmed the Iron Dome system, the highly successful anti-missile defense system deployed throughout Israel, although the IDF did not specify how many missiles penetrated the system. As the rockets rained down on Israel, at least 1,500 militants from Hamas and the PIJ infiltrated Israel at dozens of points by using explosives and bulldozers to breach the border, which was heavily fortified with smart technology, fencing, and concrete. They disabled communication networks for several of the Israeli military posts nearby, allowing them to attack those installations and enter civilian neighborhoods undetected. Militants simultaneously breached the maritime border by motorboat near the coastal town of Zikim. Others crossed into Israel on motorized paragliders. About 1,200 people were killed in the assault, which included families attacked in their homes in kibbutzim and attendees of an outdoor music festival. That number largely comprised Israeli civilians, but also included foreign nationals. A March 2024 United Nations report found evidence that some were victims of sexual violence before they were killed. Adding to the trauma was the fact that it was the deadliest day for Jews since the Holocaust. More than 240 others were taken into the Gaza Strip as hostages. Many of them were taken from their homes, and some from the music festival, including Israelis with dual citizenship. More than half of those taken hostage collectively held passports from about 24 countries, effectively pulling several countries into the efforts to release their citizens. On October 7, the IDF announced a state of alert for war and began mobilizing its army reserves, eventually calling up more than 350,000 reservists over the next several days. 2 hours later, IDF fighter jets began conducting airstrikes in the Gaza Strip. On October 8, Israel declared itself in a state of war, and Netanyahu told residents of the blockaded enclave to get out now. We will be everywhere, and with all our might. On October 9, Israel ordered a complete siege of the Gaza Strip, cutting off water, electricity, food, and fuel from entering the territory. As Israel conducted airstrikes, international efforts were made to secure the release of the hostages. Qatar, which in years past had coordinated with Israel on the delivery of international aid packages to the Gaza Strip, became the key mediator. But in the first weeks of the war, it managed to negotiate the release of only 4 of the people held by Hamas. Gaza's subterranean tunnels, forming an intricate web of passageways extending hundreds of miles, added to the difficulty of locating the hostages, as well as targeting militants and their weapons caches.
Israel controls the skies over the Gaza Strip, and from air or ground can flatten any building it considers a legitimate target. Its troops, backed up by tanks, are moving into Gaza City. As they advance through the rubble, they are uncovering another battleground, the vast tunnel network built by Hamas.
Israel's forces press into Gaza. The many kilometers of tunnels dug by Hamas nullify many of the natural advantages that they would get above ground. And right away, this comes down to three very basic things: light, space, and air.
Hamas fighters use the tunnels to ride out the bombing and spring ambushes. The tunnels are their best chance of survival against the overwhelming firepower of the Israel Defense Force.
Hamas has built the tunnel system to give Hamas time to slow the IDF down, and for the international community to say the damage happening on the surface is too much for the world to bear and to stop, and Hamas lives to fight another day.
Destroying the tunnels without high civilian cost proved difficult, and conducting military activity inside the tunnels presented a high risk for all those inside, especially for the IDF troops and the hostages who might be held there. Just 3 weeks after Hamas's assault on October 7, more than 1.4 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip had become internally displaced, and, with numbers of Palestinians killed still climbing by the thousands, it had become the deadliest conflict for the Palestinians since the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. What happened during the Hamas attacks on Israel? Hamas became the sole ruler of Gaza after violently ejecting political rivals in 2007. It has an armed wing and was thought to have about 30,000 fighters before the start of the war. The group, whose name stands for Islamic Resistance Movement, wants to create an Islamic State in place of Israel.
Another outbreak of violence in the Israeli-occupied West Bank and the Gaza Strip.
And it was amid the chaos and violence that Yassin and his followers saw their chance. It was time to unveil their new group, the Islamic Resistance Movement, better known by its acronym, Hamas.
Hamas rejects Israel's right to exist and is committed to its destruction. Hamas justified its attack as a response to what it calls Israeli crimes against the Palestinian people. These include security raids on Islam's third holiest site, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, in occupied East Jerusalem, and Jewish settlement activity in the occupied West Bank. Hamas also wants thousands of Palestinian prisoners in Israel to be freed, and for an end to the blockade of the Gaza Strip by Israel and Egypt, something both countries say is for security. It has fought several wars with Israel since it took power, fired thousands of rockets, and carried out many other deadly attacks.
Capturing innocent hostages, creating terror on the streets of Israel.
And we've seen extraordinary videos of Israeli civilians being dragged away by militants, supposedly into the Gaza Strip.
Heavily armed militants going house to house.
Israel has repeatedly attacked Hamas with airstrikes and sent troops into Gaza in 2008 and 2014. Hamas, or in some cases its armed wing alone, is considered a terrorist group by Israel, the US, the EU, and the UK, among others. Iran backs Hamas with funding, weapons, and training. Global reaction to the war. The October 7 Hamas attack drew widespread condemnation from around the world and was denounced for its terrorism against civilians by many, including the governments of many Western countries as well as India, Japan, and South Korea. Some foreign ministries, especially those of several Arab countries as well as Turkey, Russia, and China, refrained from condemning Hamas specifically and instead urged restraint. In the war's initial stages, U.S. President Joe Biden pledged unequivocal support for Israel, and on October 18, he became the first U.S. president to visit Israel while it was at war. But as the war led to a deepening humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip, Israel faced significant international pressure to allow limited aid into the territory. Some opponents of the war lodged accusations of genocide against Israel as the war moved to the southern half of the Gaza Strip, and in December 2023, South Africa sought an injunction from the International Court of Justice to prevent violations of international genocide conventions. The following month, the court ordered Israel to take all measures within its power to prevent genocide, including enabling humanitarian assistance in the Gaza Strip. Concerns were also raised over the potential of the war expanding into a greater regional conflict, particularly as attacks by Houthi fighters on ships passing through the Red Sea disrupted global shipping, and U.S. troops in the region faced attacks that, at times, proved deadly. The intense emotions surrounding the war led to a wave of anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and anti-Arab and anti-Palestinian racism. In the first several weeks of the conflict, the Anti-Defamation League, AEDL, recorded 312 anti-Semitic incidents in the United States, up from 64 incidents reported in the same period in 2022. The Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, recorded 774 complaints of Islamophobia in the United States during a similar period, up from 63 total reported incidents in August. The atmosphere at American universities during the war was under scrutiny as protests prompted concerns about students' safety and freedom of speech.
The news has been filled with stories of the Israeli-Hamas conflict, and student protests have sprung up all over the world.
In April 2024, as Columbia University's president testified before the U.S. Congress about the university's handling of anti-Semitism, pro-Palestinian activists at the university erected an encampment on campus, calling for the university to divest from Israel. See boycott, divestment, sanctions, BDS. Students at several other universities followed suit in the weeks ahead, causing significant disruption as graduation season approached. Incidents of anti-Semitism at some of the encampments and confrontations with counter-protesters amplified concerns over safety and security, leading to the dismantlement of many of the encampments and disciplinary measures, including arrest and suspension. For some of the protesting students, the U.S., the European Union, and other Western countries have all condemned the Hamas attack on Israel. The U.S., Israel's closest ally, has over the years given the Jewish state more than $260 million in military and economic aid, and has promised additional equipment, air defense missiles, guided bombs, and ammunition. It also sent 2 aircraft carrier strike groups to the eastern Mediterranean to deter Israel's enemies, particularly Lebanon's Hezbollah movement, from opening a second front in the war. The U.S. has, however, criticized Israel over the scale of the Palestinian death toll, and sharp differences have emerged between the two allies over the war. Russia and China have both refused to condemn Hamas and say they are maintaining contact with both sides in the conflict. Russian President Vladimir Putin has blamed U.S. policy for the absence of peace in the Middle East. Iran, Israel's archenemy, is a key supporter of Hamas, as well as Hezbollah, whose militants have been exchanging fire with Israeli forces almost daily since Hamas's attack. What is the situation for civilians in Gaza? The UN and aid agencies say Gaza is suffering severe shortages of food and other essentials, including fuel and medicine. This is particularly acute in northern Gaza, where it is especially difficult to deliver aid which enters the territory from the south. UN-backed report says the situation across Gaza is turning into a man-made famine. Several children have starved to death in northern Gaza. The UN says humanitarian agencies and Israel have blamed each other. Agencies say Israeli security checks on aid going into Gaza are complex and arbitrary, causing major delays. Israel denies impeding aid and says agencies are failing to distribute the aid that is allowed in. However, Israel has agreed to open a crossing into northern Gaza and allow its nearby port of Ashdod to receive shipments of aid, after sharp criticism from the U.S. That came after the Israeli military killed 7 aid workers in a drone attack, an incident which drew worldwide condemnation. Israel said the strike was a grave mistake due to misidentification. Gaza's health system is in a state of collapse. Medical facilities are overwhelmed by the huge number of injured and are struggling with shortages of staff, medical supplies, food, fuel, and water. Hospitals have been repeatedly attacked by the Israeli military, which says it has been targeting Hamas gunmen using the facilities as cover. A 2-week raid on Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City in March left the complex in ruins and beyond use. Thank you, guys, for watching. If you want more videos like this, make sure to like the video and hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next video.